The afternoon sun was warm and gentle when Lena stepped out of the taxi, holding a small purse and adjusting her light scarf. The restaurant in front of her stood tall with glass walls, golden handles, and soft lights shining from inside. It was one of those places where people walked in wearing designer clothes and left after spending a small fortune on a single meal. But Lena didn't care about any of that. She wasn't there to show off. She was simply there to meet her husband for lunch, something they hadn't done in a long time because of his busy work schedule. She looked simple, wearing a plain cotton dress and flat shoes. Her hair was tied in a neat bun and there was a calm, humble grace about her. As she pushed open the door and stepped in, the air inside changed around her. The smell of perfume, expensive dishes, and soft music filled the air. People were dressed in suits and shining jewelry. When she walked in, a few heads turned her way. Some eyes scanned her from head to toe, quietly judging her clothes, her shoes, her simplicity. A hostess near the counter smiled stiffly. "Good afternoon, ma'am. Do you have a reservation?" "Yes," Lena said kindly. "My husband will join me soon. The reservation should be under his name." The hostess looked at her screen and then at Lena again, her polite smile fading a little. "May I ask the name?" "Adam," Lena replied softly. The hostess nodded, typing quickly. Then she looked up and said, "I don't see any reservation under that name. Are you sure it's for today?" "Yes," Lena answered. "He confirmed it yesterday. I might be a little early, though." The hostess glanced toward the manager who was standing a few steps away. He was a tall man in his late 40s, wearing a suit and a confident smile that carried a hint of arrogance. His name tag read, "Mr. Daniels." He walked over slowly, his tone smooth but distant. "Is there a problem?" he asked the hostess. "She says she has a reservation, sir, but I can't find it." Mr. Daniels turned to Lena, looking her over quickly, his eyes pausing on her simple purse and dress. "Good afternoon. You said you have a reservation here?" "Yes," Lena replied politely. "My husband made it. He'll be here soon." He gave a small fake smile. "May I ask what name it's under?" "Adam," she repeated. He nodded slowly. "I see. Unfortunately, I don't see that name on today's list. Maybe he reserved somewhere else. We're usually fully booked." Lena's eyes shifted toward the tables. There were at least 6 empty ones. "I can wait," she said softly. "He'll be here any minute." Mr. Daniels paused, pretending to think. "I'm afraid we can't hold a table unless there's a confirmed reservation, ma'am. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at the cafe across the street." Lena felt her heart tighten a little, not from anger but from the sting of humiliation. She looked around again, noticing the glances of a few people nearby. Some were whispering, others simply staring. She didn't want to cause a scene. So she nodded quietly and said, "That's all right. I'll wait here." Mr. Daniels hesitated but didn't stop her. "Fine, but please wait near the entrance. We'll call you if your husband arrives." She nodded again and moved to a small waiting area near the door. A few minutes later, she asked softly, "Could I have a glass of water, please?" The hostess said, "Of course," but the water took a long time to come. When it did, it was lukewarm and half full. Lena didn't complain. She just smiled faintly and thanked her. She sat quietly, looking out the window, her hands folded over her lap. She had always believed that kindness could soften even the hardest hearts, but today she could feel the cold distance of people who thought appearances defined worth. As she sat there, 2 women at a nearby table were chatting loudly. "Some people just walk into places like this to look around," one said with a laugh. "You can tell who belongs and who doesn't." Lena heard them but pretended not to. She looked at the time and smiled softly, whispering to herself, "He must be stuck in traffic." A young waiter named Tom noticed her. He was new and nervous, still learning how things worked under Mr. Daniels' watch. He walked over quietly. "Ma'am, are you waiting for someone?" he asked kindly. "Yes, my husband," Lena replied with a warm smile. "He should be here soon." Tom nodded. "Would you like me to check again for the reservation?" She hesitated, then said, "If it's not too much trouble." He smiled. "Not at all." As Tom walked away, Mr. Daniels caught sight of him and frowned. "Don't waste your time," he whispered sharply. "She's not on the list. We need those tables for real customers." Tom looked uncomfortable but nodded. He returned to Lena and said softly, "I'm sorry, ma'am. The system still doesn't show anything, but you're welcome to wait as long as you like." "Thank you," she said gently. "That's very kind of you." Mr. Daniels passed by again, this time pretending to adjust something on the counter. "Ma'am," he said in a tone that tried to sound polite but carried a hint of insult, "we're a fine dining establishment. Some people find our prices quite high. I wouldn't want you to feel uncomfortable." Lena looked up at him, meeting his eyes. "I'll be fine," she said simply. "I didn't come for the prices. I came for the company." Her calm reply caught him off guard. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. He gave a forced laugh and walked away, muttering something under his breath. Time passed slowly. Lena continued waiting, her posture straight, her expression soft but distant. She remembered the first time she and Adam had come here years ago, before the restaurant was famous. Back then, the owner was a kind old man who treated everyone the same. Things had changed after Mr. Daniels took over. Tom returned again, holding a small menu. "Would you like to look at the menu while you wait?" he asked kindly. She smiled. "Thank you, but I'll wait until he arrives." He nodded. "Of course. If you need anything, please call me." Lena looked around again. Every few minutes she could feel eyes on her. The whispering continued. The hostess tried to act busy, while Mr. Daniels glanced at her from time to time, clearly impatient that she was still there. Then her phone buzzed. She picked it up and smiled softly. "He's on his way," she whispered to herself. Outside, a black car moved through the traffic. Inside it, Adam was finishing a call, telling someone to cancel a meeting. He wanted to surprise Lena. He knew she didn't like showing off, which was why she never wore jewelry or fancy clothes, even though they could afford anything they wanted. He admired that about her. She was the same person he'd fallen in love with when they had nothing. Back inside, Lena sat patiently, unaware of the whispers that had turned into quiet gossip. One man leaned over to his wife and said, "Maybe she's waiting for a ride, not a table." Mr. Daniels smirked when he overheard. "Some people have big dreams," he muttered. Lena heard that one. She turned her head slightly and looked at him. Her voice was calm but firm. "Dreams are good," she said softly. "They remind us that life is not just about what we see." He blinked, caught off guard again, and looked away. Minutes later, the restaurant door opened. The sound of polished shoes echoed on the marble floor. Everyone turned to look. A man in a dark suit stepped inside, tall and confident, with a quiet power about him. Mr. Daniels straightened instantly, recognizing him. The atmosphere changed at once. Lena, still sitting quietly, didn't even notice at first. She only looked up when she heard her name being spoken gently. "Sorry I kept you waiting," the man said, walking toward her. Lena's eyes lit up with warmth. "You're here," she said softly. Mr. Daniels froze, his heart sinking as he watched the man lean down and kiss her forehead before sitting beside her. The whispers stopped. The restaurant fell silent. Everyone watched as the simple woman they had quietly mocked was greeted by a man whose presence commanded respect. Lena smiled at him. "I was fine," she said quietly. "It gave me time to watch how people behave." He took her hand gently and said, "Then I'm glad I came when I did." Mr. Daniels's forced smile returned, but it was trembling this time. He didn't yet realize that the man sitting in front of him was not only his most important guest, but also the owner of the very business empire that made his restaurant famous. And Lena? She just looked around once more, her eyes calm, her heart steady, knowing that sometimes silence speaks louder than anger. The quiet inside the restaurant felt heavy after Adam joined Lena. Every eye in the room followed them, though most people tried to pretend they weren't looking. The manager, Mr. Daniels, stood frozen near the counter, his mind racing as he tried to process what was happening. A moment ago, he had spoken down to this woman, thinking she didn't belong there. Now the man sitting beside her looked like someone powerful, someone used to being respected. Lena sat calmly, not showing even a trace of pride or anger. She was the same as before, soft-spoken, graceful, humble. Adam looked at her and smiled. "You must have waited long," he said quietly. "It's all right," she replied gently. "I didn't mind." But Adam noticed the unfinished glass of water on the small side table and the uncomfortable glances around them. He could read people easily. Years in business had taught him how to sense unease, judgment, and false politeness. His eyes shifted briefly toward Mr. Daniels, who was now nervously pretending to check the reservation list again. Tom, the young waiter, came forward quickly. He had seen how Lena had been treated earlier, and now he was determined to make things right in his own small way. "Good afternoon, sir," he said politely. "Would you and Madam like to sit at a table now?" Adam nodded. "Yes, thank you." Tom led them to a corner table near the window. It was one of the best spots in the restaurant, the kind usually reserved for VIP guests. Mr. Daniels rushed to stop him, whispering sharply, "That table's for special reservations." Tom glanced at him and said in a low voice, "Sir, I think this is one of those." Mr. Daniels frowned but didn't argue further. He watched as Adam pulled out a chair for Lena before sitting down across from her. The gesture was simple, but it carried quiet power. Every small thing about him, his calm tone, his composed manner, made it clear that he was no ordinary man. A waitress brought the menus quickly. "Please take your time," she said, her voice trembling slightly. She recognized Adam now. His face had appeared in a business magazine not long ago, under the title The Private Billionaire. He was known for keeping a low profile, rarely seen in public, and never showing off his wealth. People often said his true strength was his humility, and the woman sitting with him shared that same quiet strength. Lena opened the menu slowly, but Adam noticed her eyes weren't really focused on it. "You're not hungry?" he asked softly. She smiled faintly. "I am just thinking." "About what?" She looked out the window. How quickly people decide what someone's worth just by how they look. Adam followed her gaze, his expression unreadable. "It happens more often than it should," he said. "But you handled it with grace." She gave a small shrug. "There's no point in fighting small minds. I just wish people understood that being kind costs nothing." Adam reached for her hand across the table, giving it a gentle squeeze. "That's why I love you," he said quietly. Mr. Daniels watched from a distance, feeling sweat form on his forehead. He wanted to fix the situation to make up for his earlier mistake, but he didn't know how. He whispered to the hostess, "Find out who exactly they are." The hostess looked nervous. "Sir, I think I've seen that man somewhere. Isn't he the one who owns half the buildings in the city?" Mr. Daniels' face went pale. "What?" The hostess nodded quickly. "I'm sure of it. He's on the news sometimes." Mr. Daniels' heart sank. He suddenly remembered the reservation that had been made under the name Adam. It had come through his assistant's office email, but he hadn't paid much attention. He'd assumed it was just another common name. Now he realized he had made a serious mistake. Meanwhile, Adam and Lena began their meal. The restaurant had fallen strangely quiet, with whispers running like a soft breeze across the room. People who had looked down on Lena earlier now avoided her eyes. Some even tried to smile, pretending they had noticed nothing. Tom brought their drinks first. "Here you go, sir, ma'am." "Thank you," Lena said warmly. "You've been very kind." Tom smiled shyly. "Just doing my job, ma'am." Adam looked at him and asked, "How long have you been working here, Tom?" "Just 2 weeks, sir," he replied. "Still learning," Adam nodded. "You seem to have learned the most important part, respect." Tom looked surprised, then smiled with pride. "Thank you, sir." Mr. Daniels, hearing this, forced a grin and walked over to the table, trying to sound confident. "Is everything to your satisfaction, sir?" Adam looked up at him, his tone calm but cool. "It is now," Mr. Daniels swallowed. "I must apologize for any inconvenience earlier. There seems to have been some misunderstanding about the reservation." Lena looked at him gently. "It's all right. I know how it must have looked to you." Her kindness only made him feel worse. "No, madam, please, I should have treated you better. I didn't realize—" He stopped himself before saying too much. Adam's eyes met his, calm but sharp. "You didn't need to realize who she was," he said. "You just needed to be polite." The words hung in the air like a quiet thunder. Mr. Daniels' throat went dry. He nodded quickly, mumbling something about bringing a complimentary dessert, then hurried away. Lena sighed softly and looked at Adam. "You don't have to say anything, you know. I don't want to embarrass anyone." Adam smiled faintly. "You're not the one embarrassing him. His own actions did that." For a while they ate quietly. The food was good, but Lena's mind was elsewhere. She watched people pretending not to stare, the same ones who had smirked at her before. It made her wonder how many times others had faced the same silent judgment she had that day. After they finished their meal, Adam leaned back and looked around the room. He noticed Tom clearing a nearby table and nodded to him. "Could you ask your manager to bring the bill?" he said. Tom nodded and went to find Mr. Daniels, who was still pacing nervously near the counter. "Sir, table 7 is asking for the bill," he said. Mr. Daniels froze. "Already? Did they say anything?" "No, sir. They just asked politely." He sighed in relief and printed the bill quickly, double-checking it 3 times before handing it to Tom. "Go carefully," he said. "And make sure to thank them." Tom brought the bill to the table. "Here you go, sir." Adam looked at it briefly, then took out his card. He signed the receipt without checking the total and added an amount that made Tom's eyes widen. It was 10 times the original bill. "Sir, I think there's a mistake," Tom said nervously. Adam smiled. "No mistake, keep it. It's for your honesty." Tom's voice trembled slightly. "Thank you, sir." "That's too generous." Adam stood up, helping Lena to her feet. As they walked toward the door, he glanced once at Mr. Daniels, who was standing awkwardly near the counter, his smile stiff. Adam said quietly, "You have a good place here. Don't ruin it by judging people." Then he turned and walked out with Lena. Outside, the afternoon light felt warm again. Lena took a deep breath, relieved to be away from the heavy stairs. "I didn't want that to turn into a scene," she said softly. "It wasn't a scene," Adam replied. "It was a lesson," she smiled faintly. "For him?" "For everyone watching," Adam said. "People remember how they're treated. It's the one thing that always comes back around." They reached their car, and as Adam opened the door for her, Lena looked back at the restaurant one last time. Through the glass, she could see Mr. Daniel still standing there, his face pale, his pride broken. She didn't feel anger, only a quiet sadness for how quickly people forgot kindness. As the car pulled away, Adam took her hand and said, "You handled everything better than I ever could." She smiled softly. "Maybe, but I hope he learned something from it." Adam nodded, his eyes thoughtful. "He will," he said, "one way or another." Inside the restaurant, silence lingered even after they left. Mr. Daniels finally sat down, his legs weak. He looked at Tom and said quietly, "I think I just made the biggest mistake of my career." Tom didn't know what to say. He just nodded, knowing that sometimes the simplest people could teach the biggest lessons. The next morning began quietly for Lena and Adam. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, filling their home with a soft, warm glow. Their house was large but simple inside, filled not with fancy decorations but with things that held memories, old photographs, travel souvenirs, and gifts from friends. It was a home built with love, not money. Adam was sitting at the dining table reading the newspaper when Lena walked in with 2 cups of tea. He looked up and smiled. "Good morning," he said. "Morning," she replied, placing his cup beside him. She sat across from him, stirring her tea slowly. "Are you still thinking about yesterday?" she asked softly. Adam folded the paper and looked at her. "A little. It's not easy to forget how they treated you." Lena smiled faintly. "It's all right. I've already forgotten. People make mistakes." He admired how easily she forgave others. "You're kinder than most," he said. "But I can't pretend it didn't bother me." She took a sip of her tea and looked at him carefully. "You're not planning to do anything about it, are you?" Adam smiled slightly, but his eyes gave away his thoughts. "I haven't decided yet, but I think lessons mean more when people realize them on their own." Lena shook her head, smiling. "You always find a way to make things right without saying much." He reached over and touched her hand. "You're the reason I try to be better," he said gently. Meanwhile, at the restaurant, Mr. Daniels barely slept that night. His mind replayed every detail of what had happened, the way he'd spoken to Lena, the cold way he'd dismissed her, and the look on Adam's face when the truth came out. He felt sick with regret. He had built his reputation on charm and confidence, but for the first time he felt small. When he arrived at work that morning, the staff could see the change in him. He was quieter, his usual loud voice missing. Even Tom, the young waiter, noticed. "Are you all right, sir?" he asked carefully. Mr. Daniels nodded slowly. "Just tired." But inside, he was thinking about what might happen next. If Adam was who he thought he was, the powerful businessman with companies across the city, then his job might already be in danger. Throughout the day, he couldn't focus. Every time the phone rang, his heart jumped. Every time someone mentioned a reservation, he thought it might be Adam's assistant calling. The guilt was eating away at him. That evening, when the restaurant quieted down, Tom approached him again. "Sir," he said softly, "I just wanted to say something. I don't think Mrs. Lena will hold it against you." She didn't seem like the type. Mr. Daniels sighed heavily. "Maybe, but it's not just about her. It's about who she's married to. Do you know who that man is?" Tom shook his head. "No, sir. I just know he was kind." Mr. Daniels leaned against the counter. "He's not just kind. He's powerful. If he decides to, he could close this place in a week." Tom looked surprised. "Then maybe it's a good time to change the way things are run here," he said carefully. Mr. Daniels looked at him, a bit startled by the honesty. "What do you mean?" Tom hesitated, then said, "I mean, sir, sometimes people who look ordinary are the ones who deserve the most respect. Not just the rich ones." Mr. Daniels didn't reply. He just nodded slowly, realizing that the young waiter was right. Meanwhile, Adam was at his office downtown. His assistant, Rachel, walked in holding a folder. "Sir," she said, "the restaurant you visited yesterday, the one called La Maison, it's listed under a small group owned by one of your subsidiary companies." Adam raised his eyebrows. "Is that so?" "Yes," she said. "Technically, you already have controlling shares in it. It's just managed independently." Adam leaned back in his chair, thinking quietly. "Interesting," he said. "So I don't even have to buy it." Rachel looked at him curiously. "Would you like me to contact their management?" Adam shook his head. "Not yet. I want to visit again first." The next day, Lena was surprised when Adam suggested they have lunch outside again. "At the same place?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes," he said calmly. "I think it's time we gave them another chance." She hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely." When they arrived, the reaction was immediate. The staff stood straighter. The hostess smiled nervously, and Mr. Daniels almost dropped the glass he was holding when he saw them walk in. He rushed over, bowing slightly. "Welcome back, sir, ma'am. What an honor to have you again." Adam's expression was calm, almost unreadable. "Good afternoon," he said. "We'd like the same table by the window." "Of course," Mr. Daniels said quickly. "Right this way." As they sat down, Lena whispered softly, "You didn't have to come back here." Adam smiled. "Sometimes coming back is part of the lesson." The meal began quietly. The staff was overly polite, bringing fresh water, extra napkins, and checking every few minutes if they were comfortable. Lena felt awkward. "They're trying too hard now," she whispered. Adam chuckled. "That's what guilt does." A few minutes later, Mr. Daniels approached the table, his voice low and sincere. "Sir, ma'am, I just wanted to apologize again. I spoke to you in a way no one should be spoken to. I was wrong, and I'm deeply sorry." Lena smiled gently. "It's all right. We all make mistakes." He shook his head. "No, ma'am. Some mistakes stay with us longer than others. I've been thinking about what happened, and I realize I've been judging people by appearances for years." "You opened my eyes." Lena's expression softened. "Then something good came out of it," she said kindly. Mr. Daniels nodded. "Thank you for saying that." He turned to Adam, his tone respectful. "Sir, if there's anything I can do to make it up to you," Adam interrupted gently. "You can start by treating everyone the same, whether they come in wearing silk or cotton." Mr. Daniels nodded firmly. "You have my word." When he left, Lena looked at Adam thoughtfully. "You could have punished him," she said. "Why didn't you?" Adam smiled faintly. "Because punishment changes actions, not hearts. Understanding changes both." Lena looked at him with quiet admiration. "You really believe that?" "I do," he said. "People remember kindness longer than fear." After lunch, they prepared to leave. As they walked toward the door, Adam noticed Tom near the counter. "Tom," he called softly. The young waiter turned quickly. "Yes, sir?" Adam smiled. "You did the right thing that day. You treated my wife with respect when no one else did." "That matters." Tom blushed slightly. "I just did what felt right, sir." Adam nodded. "Keep doing that. It'll take you far." Mr. Daniels watched from a distance as they left, feeling both relieved and inspired. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he had truly learned something about himself. It wasn't about business anymore, it was about character. That night when the restaurant closed, Mr. Daniels gathered his staff. "From now on," he said firmly, "we treat everyone who walks through that door like they matter. I don't care if they're wearing a suit or sandals. Is that clear?" The staff nodded, surprised by the sudden change in tone. Tom smiled quietly to himself. He knew that what happened with Lena and Adam had changed the place forever. Across the city in their quiet home, Lena and Adam sat on the balcony, watching the city lights flicker. The night breeze was cool, carrying the faint scent of jasmine from the garden below. Lena leaned her head on his shoulder. "Do you think he'll really change?" she asked softly. Adam smiled, looking out at the stars. "I think he already has," he said. "Sometimes people just need a moment to realize what truly matters." She closed her eyes, her heart calm. "Then maybe yesterday wasn't such a bad day after all." Adam looked at her lovingly. "It wasn't. It reminded me how lucky I am." And as the night grew quiet around them, they sat together, knowing that even small moments born from judgment and hurt, could lead to something good, something that made people better than before. The restaurant felt heavy with silence after the man arrived. His calm presence carried authority, though he spoke gently. He walked straight toward the woman who had been sitting quietly all this time. The staff's eyes followed his every step. The owner, Mr. Daniels, stood frozen near the counter, not sure what to do. The man smiled warmly as he reached the woman's table and said softly, "I hope I didn't keep you waiting too long." She smiled back, her eyes calm but tired, and replied, "Not at all. I had plenty of time to think." The moment shocked everyone. The same woman they had treated like she didn't belong was being spoken to with care and affection by a man who clearly didn't just own wealth, he owned respect. Mr. Daniels's confidence faded into worry. He quickly realized he had made a mistake, but he didn't yet understand how big it was. The man pulled out a chair and sat across from his wife, his expression warm, but his tone carrying a quiet firmness. He looked around the restaurant, noticing the way everyone had suddenly become attentive. "It's a beautiful place," he said casually, "but something feels off. The energy isn't right." His wife didn't respond. She only took a small sip from her glass of water, which had turned lukewarm after waiting so long. He noticed that and frowned slightly. "How long have you been sitting here?" he asked. "Long enough to learn a few things," she said softly, her voice gentle but honest. He nodded, reading her unspoken words. "Did they treat you well?" he asked again. She hesitated before answering, not wanting to create a scene, but the truth was in her eyes. He leaned back in his chair, silent for a moment, thinking. The waiter, Tom, the only one who had shown her any small kindness earlier, approached nervously. He placed menus on the table and tried to smile. "Would you like to see the special menu, sir?" he asked politely. The man nodded. "Thank you," he said with genuine warmth. "You're doing your job well." Those simple words made Tom's heart pound. He gave a small relieved nod and stepped aside. Mr. Daniels took this moment to approach. His tone had changed completely. "Good evening, sir," he said, bowing slightly. "I'm so sorry if there was any misunderstanding earlier. We were just a bit short-staffed." The man's calm eyes met his. "Misunderstanding?" he repeated slowly. "Yes, sir," Mr. Daniels stammered. "Your companion arrived before you, and there might have been some confusion." The man raised an eyebrow. "Confusion about what?" he asked. The owner swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. The man leaned forward slightly. "I believe this restaurant was booked under my assistant's name a week ago," he said quietly. "So I'm curious. If you were expecting us, what exactly caused this confusion?" Mr. Daniels' face turned pale. His words stumbled as he tried to explain, but every sentence made things worse. "I didn't realize she was with you, sir," he managed. "You didn't need to realize who she was," the man said firmly but without raising his voice. "You just needed to show basic decency." The entire restaurant went silent. Even the soft background music couldn't hide the tension that filled the air. The guests who had earlier looked down on the woman now avoided making eye contact. They could feel the weight of what had happened. The woman remained calm, her eyes down, not out of fear, but because she didn't enjoy watching others humiliated, even when they deserved it. The man took a deep breath and glanced at his wife. "Let's not spoil our evening," he said gently. "We'll eat and then we'll go." She nodded softly. It wasn't anger that filled the air. It was quiet power, the kind that didn't need shouting to be felt. Mr. Daniels tried to recover, offering to bring them the best wine and a special dessert, but the man declined politely. "No need," he said. "Just treat your customers better. That's all anyone really asks." As their meal was prepared, whispers spread across the tables. Some guests who had ignored the woman earlier now whispered apologies as she passed. Others simply looked away, embarrassed by their own behavior. Tom, meanwhile, kept working quietly, making sure everything for their table was perfect. He didn't know who the man was exactly, but he could sense his importance. More importantly, he admired how calmly he handled the situation. When the food arrived, the man thanked Tom directly, saying, "You have good manners. Keep them." Those words meant more to the young waiter than any tip ever could. The couple ate quietly, talking softly between themselves as if nothing unusual had happened. It was their peace, their normal evening, restored by love and patience. After the meal, the man asked for the bill. Mr. Daniels rushed over, saying, "Please, sir, there's no charge. It's on the house." The man looked at him for a long second before replying, "I don't accept free meals, especially not as an apology." He took out his card and paid the full amount. Then he added something more, a payment far beyond the total cost. The staff gasped quietly when they saw the number. He left a small folded note on the table with it. "This isn't for your service," he said to Mr. Daniels. "It's to remind you that respect costs nothing." Mr. Daniels lowered his head, unable to respond. The words struck deeper than any insult could have. As they stood to leave, the man turned to Tom. "You'll be hearing from me soon," he said kindly. Tom didn't understand what that meant, but the tone carried a promise. The couple walked out hand in hand, leaving behind a room full of silence. The moment the door closed behind them, the tension broke. Some customers murmured softly, others shook their heads in disbelief. Mr. Daniels stood motionless, his heart pounding. He had never felt so small. His arrogance had blinded him, and now he realized he might have offended someone far more powerful than he could ever imagine. The restaurant staff began whispering among themselves, wondering who the man really was. Some thought he was a politician. Others guessed a CEO. Only Tom seemed to focus on something else, how calm and kind the man had been, even after seeing his wife treated so poorly. Outside, the couple walked quietly toward their car. The night air was cool, and the city lights shimmered around them. She finally spoke, her voice soft. "You didn't have to do that." He smiled faintly. "I know," he said. "But sometimes people need to be reminded." She looked at him with quiet gratitude, her heart full not because of his wealth or power, but because of his steady sense of right and wrong. As the driver opened the car door, she turned back to glance at the restaurant one last time. Through the glass, she could see Mr. Daniels still standing where they left him, his head down. It wasn't revenge that filled her heart. It was reflection. People often forget that everyone deserves respect no matter how they look or dress. She hoped he would remember that lesson. When they drove away, she rested her head on her husband's shoulder. The city passed by in lights and shadows, but inside the car everything felt calm. He reached over and took her hand. "You always handle things with such grace," he said. She smiled gently. "Because anger never teaches," she replied. "But kindness sometimes does." Neither of them spoke for a while after that. They didn't need to. The evening had started with humiliation but ended with quiet dignity. The woman who had been insulted for her simplicity had shown more class than anyone in that restaurant. And her husband, though powerful, had proved that real strength doesn't need to shout. It only needs to stand firm and speak the truth softly. Back inside, Tom gathered the plates from their table. As he did, he found the note that had been left behind. He unfolded it carefully and read the message. The words stayed with him long after that night. He slipped the note into his pocket, silently promising himself that no matter where he worked or who came through the door, he would treat everyone with kindness. That night, as the lights dimmed and the last guest left, Mr. Daniels sat alone at the counter. His reflection stared back at him from the polished surface. He thought about the woman's calm eyes, the man's steady tone, and the shame that burned inside him. For the first time in years, he began to wonder if his success had made him forget what really mattered. Outside, the city carried on unaware of the small story that had just unfolded, a story about pride, humility, and the quiet power of respect. The next morning, the story of what had happened in the restaurant began to spread quietly among the staff and even some regular customers. But for the couple, it was simply another day. They didn't talk much about what happened. They preferred peace over attention. Still, something had changed. The man couldn't stop thinking about how easily people judge others by appearance, and the woman, though calm, hoped that the experience had taught at least one person to be better. At breakfast, they sat together by the window, watching the sunlight pour across the garden. The man poured her tea and said softly, "You handled everything so gracefully yesterday." She smiled faintly. There was no need for anger. It would have only made things worse. He nodded. "That's why I love you," he said simply. She laughed gently and replied, "You say that even when I'm just being quiet." He leaned back, thinking, "People like that owner forget that respect isn't a luxury, it's a choice," he said. She agreed quietly. "I don't think he's a bad person," she said thoughtfully. "Just blind to his own pride. Maybe someday he'll realize how it feels to be treated unfairly." He looked at her and smiled. "You always see good in people," he said. "That's your strength." Meanwhile, at the restaurant, the mood was different. Mr. Daniels had hardly slept. He came in early, his usual confidence gone. The memory of the man's calm but firm words echoed in his mind. Every time he looked around, he saw the faces of the guests who had witnessed everything. He realized his reputation might already be damaged. More than that, he felt ashamed. For the first time, he noticed how many times he had judged others unfairly. Tom, the young waiter, arrived soon after. He noticed Mr. Daniels sitting alone at one of the tables, staring at the floor. "Good morning, sir," he said softly. Mr. Daniels looked up and forced a small smile. "Morning, Tom," he said quietly. "Rough night?" Tom asked gently. Mr. Daniels sighed. "You could say that." He looked at Tom with a strange expression, part regret, part curiosity. "You were the only one who treated that woman properly," he said after a pause. "Why?" Tom shrugged. "She looked tired, sir. And I just thought, everyone deserves kindness." Those words hit Mr. Daniels harder than any punishment could. He nodded slowly and said, "You're right." For once, he meant it. Throughout the day, he tried to change his tone with customers. He smiled more genuinely, said thank you more often, and even helped clean a table or two, something he hadn't done in years. The staff noticed, but no one dared to ask why. Back at the couple's home, the man made a call to his office. His voice was calm but serious. "I want to finalize the restaurant purchase today," he said to his assistant. "Yes, that one," he added when the assistant asked which place. "I want everything handled quietly. No press, no announcements. Just get it done," the assistant confirmed, though surprised. It wasn't unusual for him to buy businesses, but this one seemed personal. That evening, the woman noticed some documents on his desk. "You're buying the restaurant?" she asked, reading the papers. He smiled a little. "It's not about ownership," he said. "It's about setting an example." She looked at him curiously. "What will you do with it?" He answered, "I'll turn it into something better. A place where no one feels unwelcome." She nodded, understanding his heart. "That's kind," she said softly. "But promise me one thing, don't do it for me. Do it for the people who will work there." He smiled. "Always." A week later, the official documents were signed. The restaurant had a new owner, though most of the staff didn't know who it was yet. Mr. Daniels received an invitation to a private meeting. Nervous and curious, he arrived in his office suit, expecting to meet a corporate representative. Instead, when he entered the meeting room, he froze. Sitting at the table was the same man who had dined there a week ago, the same man whose wife he had humiliated. "Please have a seat," the man said politely. Mr. Daniels hesitated, then slowly sat down. His hands trembled slightly. "Sir, I didn't know," he began, but the man raised a hand gently. "You don't have to explain. I didn't call you here to embarrass you." His tone was calm, even kind. "I called you here because I believe everyone deserves a second chance." Mr. Daniels blinked, unsure what to say. The man continued, "As of today, this restaurant belongs to me. I could have replaced you immediately, but I don't want to. I'd rather give you a choice. You can stay and learn to run it differently, or you can walk away." The owner's voice didn't sound threatening, only honest. "If you stay," he continued, "you'll start again. From the floor, as a server. You'll learn what it means to treat every person with respect, no matter who they are." Mr. Daniels sat in silence for a moment, his pride collapsing under the weight of his guilt. He finally nodded slowly. "I'll stay," he said quietly. "Then I hope you'll mean it," the man replied. "Change starts small." But it starts with honesty. When the meeting ended, Mr. Daniels left the room with a heavy heart but also something new, a strange sense of relief. For once, he didn't feel trapped by his pride. He felt like he had been given a way to fix what he had broken. Meanwhile, Tom received a surprise message from the restaurant's management. Report to the new owner's office tomorrow morning. He thought he was in trouble, but when he arrived, he was greeted warmly. The man smiled at him and said, "Tom, I saw how you behaved that day. You treated my wife with respect when no one else did. That matters to me. Starting today, you'll be the new manager. I trust you'll build a team that treats every guest the same way you treated her." Tom was speechless. His eyes filled with tears as he nodded. "Thank you, sir," he whispered. "I won't let you down," the man smiled. "I know you won't." Then he added quietly, "Remember, lead by example, not by power." Tom carried those words in his heart for years to come. When the restaurant reopened under new management, the changes were immediate. The atmosphere felt warmer, the staff smiled genuinely, and even the decor seemed brighter. People who had once felt intimidated by the place now felt welcome. The woman visited one evening, still dressed simply, and sat at her favorite corner table. Tom greeted her personally with respect and warmth. "It's good to see you again," he said. She smiled. "It's good to be back." Mr. Daniels, now wearing a waiter's uniform, carried a tray past her table. Their eyes met for a brief moment. She smiled kindly without a trace of resentment. "I hope you're doing well," she said softly. He paused, his voice quiet. "Better than before," he admitted. "Thank you." She nodded and he moved on, humbled but at peace. The man joined her later, as always, calm and kind. They enjoyed a quiet meal together. Around them, laughter and friendly conversation filled the air. The place that once felt cold and proud now felt alive and human. The man looked around and said, "This feels right." She smiled. "Because it's not about fancy food or rich guests. It's about respect," he nodded. "Exactly." Before leaving, she placed a small note under her teacup for Tom to find later. It read, "Kindness is the seed of every good thing. Keep watering it." When Tom discovered it, he smiled quietly, feeling the truth in her words. As the night ended, the couple walked out together, hand in hand, just as they had the first time. But this time there was no tension, no stares, only gratitude and warmth from everyone they passed. The lesson had been learned. The restaurant had changed, not because of money or punishment, but because two people had chosen grace over anger and compassion over pride. Sometimes, the most powerful change doesn't come from shouting or showing strength. It comes from quiet dignity, from treating others with the kindness they didn't know they needed. And that simple truth became the heart of the restaurant's new story. A place built not just on fine dining, but on the priceless value of respect. Months passed after the restaurant reopened under its new spirit. The city slowly began to talk about it again, but this time for good reasons. People said it felt different, warmer, more human, more honest. No one knew who the real owner was, but everyone noticed the difference in how the staff treated their guests. The smiles were real, the tone was kind, and no one cared about how people looked when they walked in. The woman visited the place again one quiet afternoon. She wore the same simple clothes as always, her hair tied back, her face calm and pleasant. She didn't come to be recognized. She came because she liked the food, the peace, and the feeling that the place had truly changed. When she entered, the staff greeted her with genuine respect. Tom, now the manager, noticed her immediately and came forward with a warm smile. "Welcome back," he said kindly. She smiled in return. "It's good to see you again." He led her to a table by the window, the same spot where she had waited that first day. "Would you like your usual tea?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes, please." As she sat there, sunlight poured through the window and she watched people come and go. A group of students laughed together at a corner table. An elderly couple shared a dessert, and a tired delivery man sat quietly with a bowl of soup. No one looked out of place. Everyone belonged. When her husband arrived a few minutes later, he found her smiling softly. "You seem happy," he said, taking the seat across from her. "I am," she replied. "Look around. It feels alive." He followed her gaze and saw what she meant. The air carried laughter, warmth, and something that couldn't be bought: respect. He nodded approvingly. "It was worth it," he said quietly. She smiled again. You always say that when something good comes out of patience. Tom brought their tea himself. Everything is going well, he said proudly. People love the new atmosphere. The man smiled at him. I can see that. You've done well, Tom. The young manager blushed slightly. Thank you, sir. But honestly, it's the lesson I learned that day that changed me. I'll never forget how you both handled that situation. It taught me that kindness isn't weakness, why it's strength. The woman smiled. That's exactly right, she said softly. At another table, Mr. Daniels, now working as a waiter, noticed them. He hesitated for a moment, then walked over. His uniform was neat, his expression humble. Good afternoon, he said quietly. May I bring you anything else? The man looked up, his tone gentle. No, thank you. We're fine. Mr. Daniels nodded, his face sincere. I just wanted to say, I'm grateful for the chance you gave me, he said. I didn't deserve it, but it changed my life. I've learned more in these few months than I did in all my years running this place. The woman's eyes softened. Sometimes life humbles us to help us grow, she said. It's not meant to break us. He nodded slowly, deeply moved. I understand that now, he said. I see people differently. Every person who walks in here reminds me not to judge too quickly. I'll never forget that lesson. The man extended his hand. Then the second chance was worth giving, he said. Mr. Daniels shook his hand with quiet respect before walking away, his shoulders lighter than they had been in years. As the couple continued their meal, the restaurant buzzed with quiet happiness. The man watched his wife as she poured more tea into his cup. Do you ever think about that first day? He asked. She laughed softly. I do, she admitted. It felt awful then, but now it feels like a different lifetime. It's strange how something painful can lead to something good. He smiled. That's how life works. Sometimes the hardest moments become the ones that teach everyone the most. When they finished eating, they didn't rush to leave. They stayed a while, just watching people and enjoying the peace. A little boy at a nearby table dropped his spoon, and before his mother could react, Mr. Daniels bent down and handed it back with a kind smile. The woman noticed and whispered, See? He's different now. Her husband nodded. Yes, everyone can change if they want to. Later, as they prepared to leave, Tom came to thank them again. You both inspired something much bigger than you know, he said. This place has become a reminder that respect makes everything better, for customers and staff alike. The man smiled warmly. Then that's the best reward, he said. Keep that spirit alive. Tom nodded firmly. I will. Outside, the city glowed under the afternoon sun. They walked slowly to their car, hand in hand, just as they had before. The wind was gentle, carrying the sound of distant laughter. The woman looked back at the restaurant one last time. It wasn't just a place anymore. It was a symbol like of humility, change, and quiet power. She whispered softly. Kindness always finds its way back. He looked at her and smiled. You were right from the start. They got into the car, but before driving off, he turned to her. You know, he said with a thoughtful tone, sometimes people think power is about how loud you can speak or how much you can own. But that day you showed everyone that power can be silent too. She laughed softly. You give me too much credit, she said. I was just being myself. He shook his head. That's exactly what made it powerful. In the following weeks, news about the restaurant's transformation reached the media. People began sharing stories about how they were treated there, not as customers but as guests with kindness and care. Some said the place felt magical, though no one could explain why. The truth was simple. It was built on respect and people could feel it. Mr. Daniels continued working quietly, never returning to his old arrogance. He became known for his politeness and care. He trained new staff personally, always reminding them, every person who walks in is someone's story. Treat them like they matter. Tom led the restaurant with integrity, and soon the place was recognized as one of the friendliest spots in the city. The couple, meanwhile, moved on with their lives, never taking credit for what they had changed. They believed good deeds didn't need attention. Their effect spoke for itself. Sometimes they returned to the restaurant, always dressed simply, always humble. The staff never treated them differently, and that, to them, was the greatest success of all. One evening, months later, they visited again quietly. The restaurant was busy, filled with laughter and warmth. Tom noticed them but didn't make a scene. He simply nodded respectfully as they took their usual table. As they sat, the woman looked around and said, This place finally feels complete. Her husband smiled. Because it's no longer about who owns it. It's about what it stands for. A family nearby recognized them but didn't say anything. They simply smiled, understanding that sometimes real power hides in simplicity. When the couple finished their meal and prepared to leave, Tom approached with a small envelope. "This is for you," he said. Inside was a handwritten note signed by the entire staff. It read, "Thank you for teaching us what true respect means." The woman's eyes filled with emotion as she read it. "This means more than anything," she said softly. Before they left, Tom added, "You know, people come here now not just for the food, but for the feeling. It's like the place has a soul." The man smiled gently. "That's the result of kindness," he said. "It leaves traces wherever it goes." As they stepped out into the evening air, the woman took a deep breath and said, "You think they'll keep it this way?" He nodded. "They will. Because once people feel the beauty of treating others right, they don't forget it." She smiled and looked up at the stars beginning to appear. "Then I guess this story had a happy ending after all." He looked at her lovingly. "Not just happy," he said. "Meaningful." They got into the car and drove away, their reflection fading in the glass doors of the restaurant behind them. Inside, the lights glowed softly, laughter continued, and a quiet sense of goodness lingered in the air. The place had been reborn not through money or power, but through humility and grace, two things that never lose their value. And for everyone who walked through those doors afterward, it was more than just a meal. It was a reminder that simple kindness can change everything.